Ladies and gentlemen, D23, in collaboration with Creature Features, now proudly presents our Rocketeer 20th Anniversary Reunion panel. Please welcome renowned illustrator William Stout. Co-screenwriters of The Rocketeer, Danny Bilson and Paul DeMeo. Seven-time Oscar-winning makeup designer Rick Baker. Director of The Rocketeer, Joe Johnston. And your host, writer-director Kevin Smith.
Hello. Hey, everybody. Welcome. And everyone sit down, get comfortable. This is Geek Nirvana for a cat like myself. Very, very huge. You're sitting up here, or I'm sitting up here, you're sitting there looking at some people that have built our childhoods. Like, this is, I'm going to blow your mind right now, because we just watched The Rocketeer, and that was amazing enough, but Joe Johnston, the man who directed that film, is the man who created the Snow Walker. The AT-AT came from this man.
Now, why'd you tell him that?
It's mind-bending to me. It's like, nobody should be as good as you at too many things. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, you got a Rocketeer, like, people can work their whole lives. You could save an orphan full of children from a fire and not do anything nearly as good as the Rocketeer, you know? Anybody, not you, just other people. So it's just so weird to me. Like, you figure you had one cool thing like the Rocketeer, but you got a zillion cool things going right back to the AT-AT. You also designed Boba Fett's armor. You know. That, which is just neat in and of itself. And then there's a gentleman here who told us what werewolves really look like when they become werewolves. We got two dudes here that are really directly responsible for, I would say, Mark Hamill becoming the Joker on the Batman animated series. These two dudes did the Flash TV series, man. The two screenwriters, Paul and Danny. William Stout down there, if you know Firesign Theater, he's created almost every piece of artwork of all the bootleg covers, including the logos and whatnot, including a zillion pieces of artwork and campaigns and storyboards for like Raiders of the Lost Ark and whatnot, and even Thriller? Storyboards for Thriller?
No, not Thriller. I had to turn down Thriller. And when John Landis called me, I said, but I got a great guy for you, Dave Stevens.
Yes. And before we jump into everyone here who brought this movie to life, and I don't want to leave, Bill, and ladies and gentlemen, Billy Campbell once beat up Jennifer Lopez on a movie. Give it up. And as I was watching the movie tonight, I'm like, oh my God, he may be prettier than Jennifer Connelly, man. You're a hell of a good-looking dude. But before we go any further into the cats who are right here, let's stop for a moment and think. None of us would be here right now were it not for the great work of Dave Stevens. However, none of us would be here right now if it wasn't for the great work of Dave's mom, who's in the audience. Give it up one more time for Carolyn Stevens. Okay, this amazing movie, how did it come to be? Who does it begin with? Here on the days, who is most responsible for, hey, let's go forward? It'd probably be Dave Stevens, correct? Even though he's not here, unfortunately.
Well, I guess
it was created out of my studio. I had a studio on La Brea Avenue, just below Wilshire. And I decided to sublet the front part of the studio, and Richard Hescox, who was doing paperback covers at the time, he rented out the front space, and then he divided it in two and had Dave Stevens come in and sublet his part. And so I was there when David did his first drawings of the Rocketeer and was just as amazed as everyone else to see that stuff fly off the page.
And this was now, he hadn't published, he hadn't gone to Pacific yet. It was a backup story for like a Mike Grell book, correct? It was the first 2 appearances, I think.
Yeah, it began as a backup story, and I think it was originally inspired by Commando Cody, the old serials from the 30s and 40s.
And he said it very much in the book. I mean, I'm a nerd going back to the comic book and watching the movie. They're very subtle differences. Like, it was the single engine in the comic. It's dual engine here. And it was, in the comics, he was a lot more, Jenny's allowed to be Betty Page. Rocket, if I remember correctly, the rocket's created by not Howard Hughes, but Doc Savage, wasn't it?
Yes.
Like, so it's such a cool concept and whatnot, but I understand, like, when Disney's making the movie, like, we're not paying Doc Savage, you know. It's Howard Hughes. He won't sue us. Just take those urine jar scenes out. But in any event, the books, the characters created by Dave, it starts in Pacific. It gets published by a couple other places. First starts as the backup, goes to Eclipse next, I believe.
I think so, yeah.
Goes on to Comico at one point. Dark Horse has published it. At what point, I guess, is it Dave who starts saying, like, I think this could be a movie? Whose idea was it to take it from a comic book to a movie?
I think it was these guys.
Well, actually, we found the comic book, found it. We were doing B movies at the time right near Golden Apple, where we go at lunch and dig through the bins, and we found the Rocketeer and fell in love with it. I don't remember how we got a hold of Dave, but we got a hold of Dave. And there was actually a director named Steve Miner who had an option on the book. This is in the early 80s, and his option was running out. And Paul and I had just made a little cheap movie called Zone Troopers that we showed to Dave, or we were prepping it, I don't remember, but it was of the same, we just like the same stuff. And as the comic book artist Howard Chaykin always says about Dave and Paul and I, is that we're nostalgic for our parents' childhoods. And I think that we had that in common. And then ultimately, when we pitched him the idea of bringing Rondo Hatton into this thing, he was sold, and we were broke at the time, so he gave us a free option on it. We ran into Lloyd Levin, who was working for Larry Gordon, who was running Fox at the time, and of course they wound up being producers of the movie, and pitched it to him, and he backed us up, and then we started running around studios, and it was about 6 years of work through there's more story to this. I don't want to go on forever, and I want to let the other guys talk, but it was about 6 years. We worked with Bill Deere for a while, who was going to direct the movie, worked on a lot of the story stuff with him, and then Joe came in, and he and Dave took it away while, as you said, we were busy doing The Flash. Those two ran with it, and the last thing I'll say is this is absolutely Dave Stevens' vision. We were just helped escort it along the way through, but this was all about Dave.
Right. The one thing that I would add to this is when we found the book, I remember pulling it out of the rack and opening it up and looking in the pages, and I looked at him, I said, this is a movie. I haven't even read it yet, but this is a movie. And one thing that I love about the film, the finished film, is there's big sections of it, particularly the first act and the rescue of Malcolm, that is literally the movie. I mean, literally the comic, right off the page. And I think Dave was very happy with that as well, that it really, everything about his it's like his panels coming to life, and that was really cool.
I was there. You joked about, Joe, at the beginning of the screening, who was there for opening night. I was there opening night, and I also went Saturday night as well, because I've long maintained, and it's one of the reasons I'm here, this is the finest graphic novel comic book adaptation, I felt, of all time. So damn true to the source material. And you're talking about, like, look, you pull off something like this today, people go like, well, yeah, it's popular right now. You pulled this off 20 years ago when nobody was making anything but maybe Batman. And you were able to step in and make an elegant film. That's what I was swept away by tonight, watching it here in the grandeur of the El Cap in Hollywood, as we're watching old Hollywood and whatnot. I've been to Griffith Observatory. I've looked for the Nazi Zeppelin. It's never there. But as you sit here and watch it, and you know, maybe it has a lot to do with the setting, but the whole movie is just elegant. Everything about it is elegant storytelling, elegant performances. There are moments in the movie where, when you see when they put the rocket on the, Lindy statue, that call to mind moments of classic, like Disney films, like wide screen kind of, composition. Everything about it was just beautiful, man. How do you get to this from, like, Honey, I Shrunk the Kids?
What, you didn't like Honey, I Shrunk the Kids?
I love it, man, but it's weird to see a giant Cheerio and then this, you know.
Well, the Dave's book was really a huge inspiration for me. I had just made Honey, I Shrunk the Kids, and it was it's a
beautiful movie. It's awesome.
Thank you. That was my first film, and it was a tough thing. You know, I was a first-time director, and Disney did not want to trust me with that. It was only $18 million at the time, but it was...
That was the budget, $18 million?
$18 million, yeah.
They've made that back in droves, man. Like, you come out and you're still like, you can still tell. I'm a dude, believe me, I made Cop Out. I know how it feels. I could tell my own. You came out, there's still a little thing about like, man, this movie should have done better. And you're absolutely right. But 18 million, they made that back a long time ago.
Let's not talk about what they made, okay? But after Honey, I Shrunk the Kids, I wanted to go back to work. And at the time, I didn't want to work for Disney. And I had been a fan of the graphic novel. And my agent called me one day, and I had asked him about the rights to it. He said, well, I have good news and bad news. The bad news is that Disney has the rights, and the good news is that they want to meet on it. So, you know, we finally came to terms and made peace with each other, and I'm glad we did.
Did they give you tons of room? And you included Dave in the process. I read he's a real on-set producer the whole time.
Dave was always there, and things like the design of the rocket and the helmet. We had sculpted the helmet a couple of different times, and it looked great to everyone but Dave.
Right.
And he just said, "This isn't right. We have to go back. We have to redo it." He practically sculpted the thing himself. He really, watched over every step of the design process, and that guy looks like the graphic novel. He steps right out of the pages of it.
Oh God, yeah. I had shirts that looked like the movie, like images, like when he's standing next to the flag in that pose and everyone clapped. I'm like, I had that shirt.
If only it had been windy that night. We couldn't afford a Ritter fan, but we were up there. We were up there praying for wind.
Was it?
You remember that, Bill?
Seen this on the big screen this time? Boy, I saw Dave handprints all over that film. All the lettering, all the little details. Dave was really hands-on.
Now, I read online, and tell me if this is true or not, Bill. You saw the book and you were like, I'm going to cut my hair like the character. And that got you in the room. They were like, he looks like Cliff. Or did it have something to do with you were a really good actor?
Nah. Of course it did.
I was working at the Renaissance Fair at the time, and I wasn't, I wasn't really thinking about my career so much, and I had long hair and a beard, and I think the first time I walked into the room with Joe and those guys, I hadn't even bothered to shave or cut my hair, and it went away, and I think they tested everybody in town, and in the meanwhile, I happened on the comic book, and I couldn't believe how much I thought the guy looked like me, but of course he looks like Dave, because Dave drew himself, and Dave and I look like brothers, so, and by that point I was really anxious to work. I didn't want to work at the Renaissance Fair for the rest of my life, and, so I cut my hair and I shaved my beard, and I remember the day that I walked in for the screen test. You were at the craft service table. I walked through the door of the stage, and Joe was standing right at the craft service table, and he looked up. When I thought I had a chance to get the job, Joe looked up and he went. He did a complete double take, and I thought, I have a chance. Yeah.
When do you get Rick involved? When do you turn to Rick? And what do you say at this point? You're like, it's in the book. What do I do at this point? Like, how much input do you have? How much influence do you bring to it?
Well, I mean, I think, I don't remember exactly how I got hooked up with this picture. I think it was through Dave and probably through Bill even. I know Dave came to me and, he said he wanted to have Rondo in this movie, and I'm a big Rondo fan, and I'd done actually a Rondo makeup on myself, and so I said, yeah, I want to do it, so it was just really fun.
Where do you, in terms of you've spent a lifetime making weird shit come to life.
I'm still doing it, yeah.
Still do, and won a zillion awards for it as well. There's some like Oscar Gold up here, man. Like between you and you, right? You won something for Raiders of the Lost Ark?
Yeah, but I only have one. He's got 8, 7, 12?
7.
Seven.
So far.
Somebody's overcompensating. Where do you rank it in the experience of the things that you've had, weird things you've had to bring to life? Do you have anything? Does it even rank in the top 10 at this point?
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear that.
In the world of things you've had to bring to life, does the Rocketeer even rank in the top 10? You've done wolves and stuff.
Yeah, I mean, I think I've done a lot of crazier things. I mean, Rocketeer, was a small job for me because it was just that one character, and I actually didn't apply it, so I wasn't around that much. I did the initial test. A very fine makeup artist by the name of Greg Nelson put it on. Is Greg here by any chance? Okay, he wasn't really that fine. He was the only guy I could get at the time, so it was like, no, Greg is actually terrific. Yeah, so I mean, I did sculpt it, and I initially sculpted a full head foam rubber, like basically over the head kind of mask, and I thought it looked more like Rondo, but I just thought he couldn't do what he needed to do in it. So I quickly resculpted smaller appliance things, but I was actually kind of horrified with those dubbed where's the rocket lines, because it looks horrible. With the mouth was going like this, So I almost left it in.
Rocket. Yeah. That thing?
Yeah.
Where Jay Leno attacks the dude in the hospital? You got that big Jay Leno chin. Moving on. Whenever you hear him doing comic book movies, the first thing you always hear from the talent is, "Oh my God, I hated the suit. I sweated balls. It was terrible." This looked kind of comfortable. Like, it looked like you got off easy in terms of having to wear, a superhero costume. And he's not technically a superhero, but, the jacket, and every once in a while the helmet goes on, but it didn't look like I had to 45 minutes to take a leak. Can you believe it? Like you always hear from, Christian Bale when he's not yelling at people on the set. What do you remember about wearing a suit? What do you remember about being on set?
This suit was entirely comfortable. In fact, it was really comfortable and quite stylish. I felt very sexy. But not much to say. I was quite comfortable. It was lovely. About being on set, I was utterly thrilled. It was my first film, and I was having the time of my life. I was probably a little too mischievous at times, and yeah.
But she's not here tonight.
I wasn't even going there, Joe. I wasn't.
People expect that from me. I'm glad you did it first. Is that the kind of mischief you meant? You guys were kind of involved at that point, you and her?
Somewhere along the way.
Yeah. There's some chemistry. You can see it, man. Did you ever have to be like, I said cut?
No, I wanted to watch.
Oh, good Lord. Okay, so you, a lot of people probably know, but for some cats that don't, you trained under Lucas as a kid back in the day, right? Like on the original Star Wars flicks.
Well, I started working for George when I was 25 on Star Wars in summer of '75.
It's, I guess, ridiculous notion to be like, well, you must have learned some cool storytelling techniques from old George Lucas.
Well, he did. He let me come into the cutting room and watch while he put the movie together, and because I needed to do storyboards for missing shots and things, and he was really generous with his knowledge and information. If I asked a question, he wouldn't say, shut up, kid. He'd explain why he needed a new storyboard, and it was really like going to a really great film school, I have to say.
And then didn't he send you to film school too?
He did send me to USC for a year. He paid my tuition, and he kept me on half salary at the time. And I figured it it's an offer I couldn't turn down. I had to do it.
What kind of naked pics do you have on George Lucas? He saw the talent. He just wanted to keep you around from an early age, I take it?
Well, ironically, when I got back from film school, I went off and did other things. I mean, he wasn't trying to, keep me around. He just said, go to film school, have some fun, and make some movies, and, if you come back, you come back, and if you don't, I'll hunt you down and kill you. So it was a great experience.
A really cool experience. And I'm sure he saw this and was just like, well done. Like early on. He's got it. You're a protege at that point.
He said, you know what? You copied all the things I did. I said, well, okay. So?
$18 million, dude. This is astounding. As you watch this movie, it looks bigger. It looks way more expensive.
No, we're talking about Honey, I Shrunk the Kids cost $18 million.
What do you mean?
Honey, I Shrunk the Kids cost 18. This cost, anybody know?
42.
That makes 42. A little more sense. I was like, this is an amazing looking $18 million movie. But still, Honey, I Shrunk the Kids, that's 18. That's impressive.
We shot it in Mexico.
This one or this one?
Honey, I Shrunk the Kids.
That's why it was $18 million? I thought it was because, we don't have to pay anybody. Nobody knows this kid except Rick Moranis. All right, so this was what, 42? Right on. I mean, it's still, even that it looks way bigger. Everything about the movie is big, looks expensive. Even the club scenes and whatnot. Elegant storytelling. What do you remember best about the shoot? You have a highlight? You said before the screening started, you hadn't seen it since 20 years ago. And in this room? This is where it premiered at the El Cap. Any weird kind of do you get stoned for a screening this? I would have to be 20 years later in the same spot. Let's do it, The Rock-a-Who?
You must be psychic. No, no, it's a lot funnier than I remembered it being.
Right.
It really is.
It is. It's charming.
I don't remember all those jokes. I don't know about you guys, but,
No, some of them I completely forgot about, and I was laughing really hard. And my kids were elbowing me, saying, "Why are you laughing?" But
Well, I still can't believe we got away with Mrs. Pie as the owner of the as the lady who ran the boarding house. That one, it's a Disney movie, and we got that one through there, and it always stuns me when I see that.
They didn't Michael Eisner wasn't I understand this.
No.
And you cast Margot Martindale in her first film. That was her first movie. She plays Mags Bennett on Justified.
Right on. Do we want to turn it out to anybody else? I'm sitting up here jawing at these gentlemen, but I'm sure you guys might have way cooler questions, man. I know there may not be a mic on the stage, but if you raise your hand, I'll re-shout it out so everybody could hear. Or I'll just keep talking. All right, there you go, right there, man. Shout it out. He talked to Dave before Dave passed, the gentleman here, about a possible sequel, and he was asking what was the possible holdup if there was a possible sequel. Am I correct? Yes. Was there ever talk of sequel? Was there ever? I mean,
yeah, we all had deals for sequels, but the numbers didn't add up in the numbers game.
How much did it do when it came out, or what's considered?
I thought it did 49.
49, 50.
It eventually did around 62, but that's not enough for a sequel, even in 1991 dollars. There was a lot of talk about a sequel on June 20th, 1991.
Right.
And there wasn't any on June 22nd.
We call that a Mallrats in my house. Of course, it goes without saying that you're bummed everyone always wants to connect to the widest possible audience, but you guys had the reviews on your side, I believe, and general populace opinion. There was no internet really at that point, it would have been a whole different story, I think, if there had been an internet. But it's a movie that you mention and instantly people go, "Oh, I love that movie." You never hear people go "Oh, I hate it like poison." Everyone loves The Rocketeer, so there's that.
Yeah,
look, I made Jersey Girl, so fuck you guys. My pain's much deeper, You got a quality movie at the end of the day. What do I got? Anyway.
I think when we did talk with Dave about a sequel, just in the most general sense, I remember we talked about we got to take him to New York. And so some of that ended up being in the comic, the second Cliff's New
Right.
York
We wrote
adventure.
the second comic with Dave. About the time, sometime during the writing process, we teamed up with him and wrote that second comic where he goes to New York. And then the Creeper was in that as well. And so a lot of the things that tie to this movie were in that second book, series of books.
Did you guys work on the Rocketeer story that Dave wrote, where the Rocketeer teams up with Superman?
No. I saw a little bit of that art just recently. I read a story about it, and I vaguely remember him talking about it, which was like an incredible idea, and I'm sorry he never completed it or had it published, but great idea.
That went nowhere. But I've never met the dude, Dave Stevens, but I knew him through a friend. I was a huge fan of the book and his artwork in general. When my kid was born, a few artists in the comic book community got together and did a little jam piece. And it was like Mike Allred and Matt Wagner, Joe Quesada, and 3 of their characters, each character they created, holding a little baby, and my kid's name Harley Quinn. So they had Dave Stevens paint Harley. So every day as I head up into my house, right on family wall, there's a big section of pictures of our life and whatnot. There's this little Dave Stevens piece of artwork, man. And it kills me each time. Like, I'm not a guy classy enough to have an original piece of Dave Stevens, but he painted my unborn kid. I'm like, it's beautiful. I've had connection to this movie, on small levels, on deep levels. If you watch Jay and Silent Bob Strike Back, the rocket is the last place I ever saw it in a movie. Was we had a rental house where we were just renting props for the Blunt Cave sequence. And it was just the doodads to hang on the wall, and one of them was the jetpack. And I was like, this is the Rocketeer's rocket. And they were like, the Rocka who? I was like, yes! And so we wound up putting it in the background of the flick, man. The movie has meant the world to me for years and years, as it seems to for everyone here in the room, man. Thank you guys so much for making it. They told me to keep it short because we were supposed to go over to the cool exhibit. We wound up starting a little late and whatnot. And I guess over at the Max Factor building, we're looking at props and stuff like that. And we're going to see some stuff laid out.
And I think we're going to screen something here a little.
That's what I was setting it up for. You've been busy ever since. It's not like, you took time off or whatnot. You went off and made a movie recently that, based on the footage I've seen, seems very reminiscent of this film. Like the moment they announced you as the director, I was like, that makes sense, because based on this movie alone. That movie is called, sir?
Captain America, the first.
It's a good sign when they don't even let you finish the title. What have you brought for us tonight, good sir?
We have the brand new trailer that has not been seen by anyone yet. And I guess it will be online tomorrow. Is that right, Stephen? What? Thursday. Okay.
You got a 2-day jump on people here. You're going to get to see something tonight, and for 48 hours you can lord it over people on the internet. Give it up for the wonderful creative team behind the Rocketeer, ladies and gentlemen.